I feel that when we start becoming complacent, we are now depriving others of greatness. How powerful it is that these kids, when given an opportunity to be trusted and respected and showcase their learning in a way that can represent it, really goes a long way.
Glenn Robbins is the superintendent of Brigantine Public Schools in New Jersey and a multi-award-winning educational leader recognized for his innovative school leadership and district transformation strategies. He is also a best-selling author of Calming the Chaos, Ancient Stoic Wisdom for Successful School Leadership. And his latest book, I Won't Back Down, is a true beacon in today's educational landscape.
There is a lot of chaos in the world. There is a lot of anger. Everybody wants things now. There is a lot of criticism against public education. But how do you control yourself? How do you go back to you? Do you let that stress affect you, or do you control what you can control and try to make a difference from there? We have to remember the human element of empathy and compassion. You're trying to push people to greatness. You're trying to lead them, and hopefully they'll do it themselves. But at the same time, don't lose focus that people need love and support.
So, Glenn, you've been a leader, I don't know for how many years, but what does this mean for you to be an educational leader and stay in education? I'm always curious, what makes people stay in education?
Great question. I've been a school superintendent since 2016. Before that, I was a principal for 4 years, and before that, I was a high school assistant principal for 4 years as well. So quite an extensive amount of years on the administration leadership side. And I absolutely love my position. I love the job of leadership because you're able to grow other leaders. You're able to serve so many other people. People think that, when you rise up, you have more power. You actually just have more responsibility to serve and more responsibility to help others grow. What has made me successful in the past doesn't make me successful tomorrow. And it's helping and mentor, current students, staff, and or people across the country or across the globe to realize that you're constantly learning and you're constantly trying to make other people better. So love the position, even with all the hard times that do come with it. Because if we're not leading, then who is? And that's a scary question that I ask myself a lot. If I'm not there and people that I know should be in the field are not there and it's other people, are we really preparing our kids for the world that is today and where it's going to be tomorrow? So we have an obligation to serve, and we have an obligation to try to continue to make this place better than what we found it when we pass on one day.
So do you feel that you're growing through this process, like helping others grow? But what's in it for you?
I think it's almost like teaching, right? When you're teaching, you're learning at the same time. You're figuring things out. So as I'm working with different leadership across the country or in my schools, it's reinforcing things that I could do, that I've been doing, that I could do differently. It gives me a lot of reflection. And I think that's something that we don't do as leaders, especially in the education field, that well. Thinking about our day, thinking about our week, thinking about our year. And, are we doing a job that we can do the utmost possibility to, or are we just coasting and being complacent? And I feel that when we start becoming complacent, because that's just a human thing that we have, we are now depriving others of greatness. And I think about, there was a quote from a former professional athlete that said he gave his all each and every game because he never knew if that one person was going to come to that game one time in their lifetime. So it's not easy to give 100% each day. Some days we're at 60%, some days we're at 80%, some days we're higher or lower. But those kids, those people around you, they need you. There's a time for rest after hours and so forth, and recharge, and hopefully people do that. But for me, it's learning and growing and working with other leaders that is a true joy to me.
And what is one thing that you have stopped doing over the years because you have seen yourself grow out of it? What is it could help other leaders maybe stop doing as well?
That's a great question. I think it's just different policies or procedures that I had amongst myself, years ago, I was in the hallway all the time. I had my office was in a cart. And that was a big fad like 10 years ago. And I'd be around always there. But there were some times where I needed to be behind closed doors, to get some paperwork done or meet some families and make some phone calls. I think, people always say they love having that open door policy, but a good mutual friend of ours the other day, Danny Bauer, uh, said it. And the question is like, are you really an open door policy or are you a walk-in clinic for people? And when you're doing a walk-in clinic, are you really getting the work done that you need to get done? So for me, I've really stepped back. I try to allow my people to make decisions without me being in their shadow or micromanaging. Allow them to have that freedom and autonomy to make those decisions. And if they need help, they can call me, or stop by. But that's something I've tried to done is kind of, lead from the front and then back off and, try to empower and make them leaders. If I was out there constantly doing all this, doors open all the time, am I really empowering people to be leaders or am I just telling them what to do all the time? So that's something I've really stepped back from.
And for the leaders that you are now, like they're in your team and you're supervising them, do you have to push them and convince them to do that? Or do you think it's easy because they see you doing it?
Well, I think we're all humans, right? So there's some days where we wish it was all logic and it's emotion.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I try to push on my team and others across the globe is that you have to realize that you're working with human beings. You're
Mm.
number one capital, and people are going through things in their life that you may not be privy to. And you need to be understanding of that. You need to put your ego to the side, or
Mm.
envy or jealousy or whatever it may be. Like for an example, you might have a staff member that's been out for quite some time and people get jealous. Why is this person not here? Or they start posing questions. Well, they don't know that this person might be going through something at home with his or her wife. Things that are different things that you can't divulge out. And I think that's the part where, I continue to try to push on my staff and my team and people across the globe is that we have to remember the human element of empathy and compassion. You're trying to push people to greatness, you're trying to lead them, and hopefully they'll do it themselves. But at the same time, don't lose focus that people need love and support.
Yeah, yeah. I love the way how compassionately you approach this sensitive issue. And I guess it's not easy for new leaders to step into their role,
Hmm.
to the struggles that they're facing, because there might be some other leaders listening right now, and they need some words of comfort that I've been there and there are lots of other things coming along the way. Don't stick to that. Don't linger on this energy right now.
Hmm.
So what is this words of comfort that you could give them right now, the new leaders?
There's a quote, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it can only rain for so long, and then the sun has to come out, and
Mm.
things are shining again. So, when you get down that rabbit hole and your imposter syndrome kicks in and everything is just pushing you down and you think everybody's watching you, um,
Yeah,
they're not.
yeah,
They're not. People are preconceived with their own, uh, their own abilities of what they're doing that they forgot about paying attention to you. It's not all about you.
yeah.
Realize that things will pass. Realize that there are so many other people out there that have been through this, if not worse, that would be willing to talk to you. Uh,
Mm.
and then at the same thing, what opportunity or what learning experience is coming out of this bad time? I have a new book coming out called I Won't Back Down from Rejection to Redirection. And it's all
Mm.
about musical artists who were told no or struggled or told not to quit their day jobs and so forth. And if you think about that, what would the world of music be if they actually listened to the critics and or they actually listened to their own negativity in their head? And I tie that into education in each chapter for any position in education that things will pass. You're not the only
Mm.
person that's ever gone through these hard times. And if there is anything you can take out of it, it's the learning experience. It might be hellacious at the time you're going through it, but in a couple of days or a couple of years or whatever it may be, you're going to look back and go, wow, I'm really glad I went through that. It taught me this and it's made me better.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And maybe even the acknowledgement that the moment you start feeling in your power, you have leveled up already.
Mm.
You're a beginner in that new level. So
Yeah.
again, imposter syndrome will kick in, right? In this new level. And again, you go through the same process. So
Yeah,
this acknowledgement,
I think you could tie that into the book that Danny Bauer and I have, The Common to Chaos, about the Stoicism and leadership. There are
yeah,
only certain things that you can control.
yeah, yeah,
Your attitude, your belief, your
yeah.
energy,
What
you
about it?
control that. You control that, but you
Yeah,
can't control
yeah,
what somebody's going to say. You can't control what somebody's going to do, but you can
yeah.
control you. And I think that's something we have to try to remember too. As many times we want to try to save the world and put out a million fires and do everything right, you can't, because you don't know how they're going to react to what you tell them to do or what recommendations you make. You can only control what you can control, which is you.
What is one more idea that you pick from this book that is really special and dear to you, to your heart?
With the book for Danny and I, the Common to Chaos
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
I think it's the fact that we wrote it to be short and intentional because people have limited time. But we wrote it for the four virtues plus the added equanimity for the fifth, in regard to that not everybody has a mentor that they can truly lean. And we put in scenarios and situations and reflection questions that we've been through. We changed the names, maybe changed the scenarios around a little bit, but these are all tough times that we went through and we know leaders will go through as well. So with that being said, that's what I take away from it. We're trying to help that you might not have the best boss to work for or the best mentor to have or the best learning experience environment where you're at. And we're trying to give you that. So that way, when you do move up or move to a different environment, you have some tricks of the trade from two great veterans who can help you. And that was our ultimate hope, but also trying to make people realize that there is a lot of chaos in the world. There is a lot of anger, right? Everybody wants things now. There is a lot of criticism against public education, but how do you control yourself? How do you go back to you? Do you let that stress affect you, or do you control what you can control and try to make a difference from there?
Yeah, and escape the victim state, right?
Mhm.
Powerful, really, and really insightful. And how do those virtues help you in your personal life? Do you have the same virtues in your personal life?
Yes, easier said than done, right? Like it's to say I'm going to be stoic and everything, whereas there's many times where I'm grinding my teeth or I'm driving home and screaming at the steering wheel, listening to angry music. But that's my vent time because there's no one around me.
Yeah.
But how do I do that? How do I focus on that? I think about wisdom as one of the virtues. And what am I doing to grow? What am I doing to learn? Who am I reading about? What other leaders across the country in any position can I learn from? So that's something I really harp into is any type of leadership things that I can get, whether it's a book, a podcast, a vlog, whatever it may be. I'm diving into that. Um, a temperance of being more relaxed and understanding what I can truly affect and what I can't affect. Justice, trying to be, it's not just for all the systems and right or wrong, but also from like a leadership perspective. I'm the leader, so what money I spend is public money. I have to spend it knowing that I'm spending it the best possible way for the public. And lastly is courage, right? The
Mhm.
courage to get out of bed, the courage to go to work, the courage to make a decision that people are not going to be happy with. But is it for the greater good of the organization? You're going to have critics here and there, and you have the courage to keep moving forward. Um, because if we're not moving things forward in the world, in education, and we're just doing the same thing over and over again, then what are we even doing? So it takes a little courage to fight back times in here and there to have the deeper, meaningful, crucial conversations when needed, and the
Mm.
courage to have that conversation. In fact, that you're going to get yelled at, you're going to get criticized, you're going to have that, but the courage to continue to try to be, even keel, stoic, and to have that conversation with somebody, because I think that's a lost art. I think it's becoming either my way or your way. And it's trying to
Mm,
teach people again, hey, we can agree to disagree and still get along. You know,
mm.
we can agree to disagree, but this is how it's going to be, and this is the reason why. You know, so I do try to focus on the virtues uh pretty much every day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you feel that people who are like experience they're out of alignment in their life is because they have different virtues in their personal life and different virtues in their professional life when they are in education, especially? Do you feel this is happening?
I think so, right? I think that some people are that way.
Yeah.
Some people are great on social media, but they're not the same
Yeah.
behind doors. Um, but once again, I think that's the world we live in. It's
Mm,
the Wizard of Oz. You know, pay attention to the person behind the the screen. But I think that's just the world we're at. And I think that if you are going to be a true leader, especially in education or any job that's a public sector, all eyes are on you all the time. You know,
mm,
you are at all times is being watched. You can't really have a professional and personal difference because people are watching you. You know, what you can say, oh, I was on my beach and I was said something out loud. Well, you're still the leader of that school. You're still the leader of these people. It reflects on all of them. So I think that's something that people have to understand is, yeah, you have your freedom of speech here in America, but you have to be cognitive of what you're saying because it will come back, you know, and
yeah.
you do represent a group of stakeholders that looks high to you.
Maybe this is the reason they're experiencing this conflict
Mm.
professionally, because they're not in alignment with their virtues and values. And what is one question that, like one answer that was answered through a young student? If you can remember one student sharing something and gave you an answer for your leadership journey or a struggle you were going through. Can you go back and remember something?
So a kid that pushed me forward in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I think I've had quite a few, and I've been very blessed by that. But one that I remember actually wrote me a poem. Uh,
Mm,
young man named Carter. He was an eighth grader when I was a middle school principal. And we were doing a lot of progressive things at the time that the majority of the state was not. We gained a lot of great national accolades because of the work we were doing. And
mm,
I was also getting pushed down by traditionalists and being questioned a lot. And
okay.
at times I started wrestling internally in my head. And when Carter gave me the poem about, you know, who Mr. Robbins is and how he listens to him and how he helps him become a stronger human being, it was just very heartwarming to know that the kids are watching and to know I was caring for them. You know, and I don't think that speaks enough volumes. Another one where we do a class, we do it here at this district too, where it's ungraded. And that caught a lot of heat in the very beginning because years ago when I was a principal, because it was an ungraded class. Well, are the kids really learning and are they really doing what they're supposed to be doing? And I remember the one year we had close to 70 visitors come visit us from all over the country. And actually, we even had a person come from Australia and Ukraine too. Um, but they asked the kids, what do you like most about the ungraded class? And they said, number one, and this is what I love because like I mentioned earlier about people, right? Empathy and compassion. And this is like SEL built into it. I don't even classify it as SEL. It's like just the work you're supposed to be doing. She
Yeah.
answered back, it's given me a chance to express what I want to express in a project without being penalized on it. So if
Mm,
I'm working on a certain project, I don't have to abide by a rubric that I'll know I'll lose points if I add art to it because I love art. I'm going to express my answer in a completely different way. If I did this in another class and I did it the artistic way, she's like, I'll get a 50. But the fact that I'm able to do it my way and still demonstrate the knowledge that I have, she's like, now I'm getting somewhere. And to me, when I heard that, and that really rippled across, you know, for everybody that was there and heard that story, how powerful it is that these kids, when given an opportunity, to be trusted and respected and showcase their learning in a way they can represent it, really goes a long way.
What if we heard them? What if we heard those young ones, and how many things we would learn, and how many things we would change, right? And
That's
what's a struggle you have been through, again, through working with a student, that gave you a breakthrough and you saw new light in your teaching or in your leadership style, and you started a new practice through this kids challenge?
I think it was back when I was teaching. I had a very diverse class. And I remember having a young man come up to me midway through the year and say, "Hey, my brother almost died of a drug overdose this weekend, and I haven't told anybody but you." And I was only like mid-20s, and I'm like, "What?" It was not an area that I grew up in, not things that I was used to experiencing. And for him to have that, tell that to me, um, made me start opening up my eyes to like, hey, what is everybody else going through in the weekends? It was also like, what are they going through as a family? What struggles do they have? And I started seeing like, from there, I was coaching soccer, or football. And what I saw was I had kids that lived 4 miles away in motels that were walking through the rain to get to practice at Saturday at 8 a.m. that had little to nothing, but yet there were other kids who were late. So it just made me realize when that young man said that to me in the hallway about his brother, that there are so many kids going through so many different things and so many families that are struggling. And I said, I have to reevaluate how I'm teaching and how I'm looking at the world, in the field of education. Because if I'm going to make a difference, I really need to connect to that young man and those other kids that are walking the soccer. I really need to understand what's going on and how I can better help them. So I
Yeah,
think that hopefully answers your question in a way, but it was
yeah,
really eye-opening to me to see the diversity of the struggles that they had.
yeah. This sharing opportunity for him, it was a great opportunity for him to share, because obviously he felt he trusted you. But for you also, it gave you, like, it opened a door for you to see things you weren't seeing. So again, we should be listening to the young ones. They are teaching us so much. I have, like, everything I have created was through speaking to them, like talking to them and sharing and
Like,
listening.
give you an
Listening.
example where I am now. We've revamped the schedule based on student voice. We've revamped all the
Mm,
furniture in the district because of student voice. We gave the staff a voice as well. We gave administrators and parents a voice, but we really harped home on, what should learning look like? If we
mm,
follow you around all day, what's it going to look like to sit in those chairs? Are they comfortable enough? Are you, getting the rigorous education that you need? And like I said, when the kids now see like, hey, I helped redesign these learning spaces, or hey, I helped redesign these classes,
mm.
really speaks volume to their ownership. Because like you said, when you're listening to the biggest stakeholder group that's in the building, you can really make a difference from there because they feel that they're buying in, they feel that they're loved and cared about, just like your staff, right? Like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And is there one thing that your district is pioneering in, like the way that you teach, the
Mm.
way that the students intervene in their learning, or the environment they're building?
That's a great question. Well, we have that ungraded period, like I mentioned, from kindergarten to 8th grade. So all the kids get an opportunity to work on projects that they want to work on. That's exploded to several groups doing podcasting in the building, some doing on virtual on the YouTube. Uh, we have one class that's cybersecurity for 8th graders. We have another class that just got built into that with the artificial intelligence. So understanding that in 8th grade. And that's been a
Mhm.
struggle for me because at least where we are, all the money for grants and extra stuff come at high school level. And I'm trying to say, no, these kids are doing amazing things on their cell phones and computers. They need to know this stuff now. So we start, with this AI class, doing that. Another class that we have is called the Mr. Rogers Project. Mr. Rogers was a very well beloved TV icon in the United States about getting to know your neighborhood and always kindness and manners. And we teamed up with the Chamber of Commerce after the lockdown of COVID and said, how can we get our kids involved with the community and the businesses to prepare the workforce? So we have 8th grade kids who hear a pitch from various workforce groups, different businesses, not mega conglomerate superstores, but like, entrepreneurs who have just a brick and mortar shop. And the kids are amazing at social media. So they'll come in, they'll present to the kids about what their shop is and what they're trying to sell, whether it's surfboards, insurance, bait for the tackle that were next to the beach, clothing, food. And then the kids help redesign their social media strategy. And they
Wow.
also redesign a publication that goes out into the small town newspaper that we still have. So the kids redesign that for them. They go back and forth with the employer through emails and texting saying, hey, what was this you said the other day at your presentation and how can I make this better? They do on Canva. So when you walk into the physical store, there's a poster that the kids made by Canva that has a QR code that the customer zaps into where the business wanted that business link to go to. So they go back and forth for a week or two on that. And then after that, there might be like 5 kids, like 20 kids total in a class or 25. And let's just say by 5. 5 might be working with you in your shop. 5 might be working with somebody else and just so forth. So those kids are focused just on your business, and then they present about your business. So those 5 kids are competing against those 5 amongst the other 25 in that class, right? And then you as the business owner have to pick one winner, but you're
Wow.
helping the teacher grade them, for how they were presenting in an email, how they were texting, how they were presenting themselves with the soft skills. And then after that, a couple of weeks later, they go on a field trip. So just because the kids that work with you get to go see where you work, the 20 others don't know you still. They didn't focus on yours. So they take them to the workshops as well, to the work businesses, and they can see your shop. And then they go to the next one. So every business place gets showcased. So in a way, you're building entrepreneurialism. They're also teaching them how the struggles of entrepreneurialism is. They're helping them with the social media pages because some of these businesses are not very good at it. And they're getting a younger client, and new clients that come in, and it's building a workforce to come together. So the Mr. Rogers project really exploded. We didn't know how it was going to be. At the start of the year, we had a 26 business wait list to get in. We work with our Chamber of Commerce. So all the businesses that are part of that chamber have to pay a certain amount of money into their tiers. If you get into the A tier, the gold, or whatever they call it, then you can work with the kids and you get that opportunity amongst all the other things that come being part of that commerce. What a great way that we've opened up, this whole new world to the kids, whole new world to our businesses. And then looking at it from a structural organizational part, I've opened up more PR across the island. So now I have people who've never been in our school before coming to our school, into our district and so forth. So now they're like, before they'd be like, oh, you don't know what's going on in there. They're not doing anything productive. Now it's, oh my God, have you seen what these kids can do? You need to see what's going on in this building and for this
Wow.
us and so forth. So that's been a major game changer for us. And like I said, it's building hopefully a new workforce to better prepare these kids. And that's what we said to the chamber too. Teach them what they need to know when they go for a job. And I think the fact that they're just having those conversations and emails, this past 2 months ago, I had a business owner stop me and she said, your kids email better than my own employees. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, this is wonderful.
I bet they do. And that's mind-blowing what you have been describing. And I'm sure, I think I know the answer. How much do teachers have to intervene in this process? How much do they have to structure it and push the students do things?
Every class is different, right? Sometimes there's like lightning in a bottle class and other classes like, oh, they need to be pushed a little bit. But for the most part, this is, I believe, our 3rd year now, and it's been building. But the kids know that when they do go visit these businesses, they usually hand out swag. So you're getting a sweatshirt, a hat, or gear, and to an 8th grade kid, that's awesome. Heck, to me, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Like, I'll take a new
Yeah.
t-shirt, right? But they also know that the winners at the end also receive scholarship money. They can use that for a high school tuition program and or for college. So the business chamber selects the winners and gives them scholarship money. So there's a little incentive to that as well. And then lately it's been a little bit about pride. I'm going to try to outdo this kid. I want to be the number one because the businesses showcase these kids on their Facebook page and media pages afterwards. Like, these kids helped me redesign things. These kids helped me do this. So uh, I think you could mention all that, but the teacher that I have running it is phenomenal. She has helped evolve this program, Jessie Eslow, to a whole nother level. And she really pushes heavy onto the business owners. And we have a liaison that helps build between the business owners and the school. Two amazing ladies to come in and work with our teacher and their kids to help them go through that process. So, but the best part is they all work together from the adult standpoint. And from the kid's standpoint, like I said, it's a little more pride is starting to build as we go forward.
You're building a beautiful ecosystem of synergy and growth. And what better tools for these students? Like, you're equipping them with the best tools and practices and strategies. Do they teach each other in the
The
process?
kids? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because when they're working on those projects or working on a Canva or whatever, maybe, or any class, I think that's one thing we do really well here. We teach them collaboration. We teach them to have the conversations with each other. And some kids take a lot of pride in that. Some kids are still bashful and they don't want help here and there. But for the most part, they're helping each other in some particular way because they're smaller. They're 8th grade for the most part. We know they're cool, but we also know that they have a warm heart when they're not going through adolescence at times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess they also teach leadership
Mhm.
other and you, the leaders.
So we actually, as we were going through that, we actually instituted a new leadership academy this year from an outside retired educator who does this working with kids for 7th and 8th graders. So we've been having him come once a month and working with the kids for teamwork, collaboration, leadership, and so forth. But that was something we just added on to. We knew we were doing great things with the Mr. Rogers, AI, the ungraded class, all these other great things that we're doing. But from the leadership perspective, like we talked about earlier, how do we continue to be progressive? How do we continue to help the kids become better leaders? This past Friday, we had community leaders come in because we do a Grinch video. The Grinch goes around. The first year was just the police and fire department. The last 2 years, I reached out to the Chamber of Commerce and said, we'd like to showcase to businesses. How can the Grinch go in and terrorize a business? Who wants to be part? But the kids put together the storyboard. And it started in 6th grade. So this past Friday, we had 8th graders put together a beautiful storyboard of what they thought it could be. And then we had all these business owners, city council, fire, police, public works come in and say, could we add this, this, and that to it? Could we put these stores in it? And this is what's gonna evolve. So I'm waiting to see what the kids come up with. But that whole thing was led by the kids. They were presenting to adults, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which I was not doing. And they're doing it in confidence and something that they love. Because once the storyboard's completed, now we got to contact everybody, let them know your filming time is going to be between 11 and 11:15. We're coming to your space. And then we're going to highlight you and then we're going to move on. And then the kids have to put the video together and then they have to edit everything and then they have to publish it for the whole school and everybody else to watch. I remember the first time we did this, in the first year we had 500,000 views. So, the kids get a lot of excitement about that. And it's built once again, that community structure. And I keep saying, I'm just the stunt man that wears the Grinch outfit. These kids are leading us where and everything should be. So when you think about that from the various curriculum standards that we're doing, it's pretty impressive. I'm pretty sure I could knock off a bunch of boxes on what they're doing throughout this process. So just another example. leadership to
Yeah,
begin.
it's mind-blowing. I'm super impressed. I would love to see it. I'd love to watch all those videos that you're going to create.
Just go on
And
YouTube, type in Brigantine Grinch and they'll come up. There's 3 of them right now.
yeah,
So,
we need to put all the links and the description of this podcast. And this is like, I don't even need to ask what's your top tip, because you have shared so much. and and just leaders being inspired ask their students and wait for them to give an answer, and they're going to build wonderful things. But if you can pinpoint one thing that one leader can do tomorrow, this week, um, to get started, maybe they haven't done anything like that, they've never let go of control,
mhm,
and maybe the teachers are not used to letting go of control.
mhm.
What is one thing they can do to get started?
I think it's just having the courage to ask the questions or get people involved. Like, I did not know how the Mr. Rogers project was gonna get to where it is now. All I knew was, I said to myself, I need to reach out to the president of the Chamber of the Commerce at that time and ask, can I come to one of your functions and speak for 5 minutes? I'd like to introduce myself and I'd like to be able to say, we're looking to create something. Now, at high school levels or collegiate levels, kids can do a lot more. They can work legally and so forth. They can do much higher standard level jobs. Where at 8th grade, they can't. So we had to cater to it. So as a school leader, who is your client? Who is your kids? What can they do? And they can do a lot more than you think they can do, and what are you hoping to build? So it's just having the courage to ask people to get involved, to step aside,
Mm.
move your ego aside and say, would you mind come helping us? Would you mind come talking to us? We did the podcasting last year. I listened to podcasts all the time. I tried podcasting here and there, wasn't successful. And then I said, you know what? Some kids were like, we want to try podcasting. So we brought in 2 influencers from the area and said, would you just speak to the kids? And it evolved from there. So 9 out of 10 times, people want to help, especially when it comes to
Yeah,
kids. So have the courage to ask those questions. Can you please help me, or can I please get involved?
yeah, yeah. And the kids will definitely take lead and then build it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They
Get out
just
of the
need
way.
little support and they're ready to go. I'm sure they do, because if kids need the feel that they are growing through the process,
Mhm.
then they're in. What stops them is that feeling that I'm not growing through this. There's nothing in it for me. The moment they feel there's something in it for them, then they're just in. Okay, so for the final part of this podcast, we play a game. I play a game with my guests. So
Okay.
books, and you can pick one of the books. It's self-development books or books I love to read and learn and grow. And I'll explain the
I've
game.
read a couple of them. Uh,
Okay.
so, all right, I'm just picking a book. Let's just do the top one, The Atlas at Heart from Brene Brown. Make it easy
Okay.
on you.
Okay, now you're going to give me a page.
Oh boy, page 45.
45 and a line. Let me see, because there are lots of empty pages in this one. 45, yes, and a line.
A line. All right, let's
Yeah.
go. Line number 3.
Okay, I'm going to read line number 3 and the context around it.
Okay.
And then we're going to discuss how this resonates with everything you're doing, personal or professional life.
Okay.
Okay. So, what we never did was reality check our expectations or make them explicit. We just tended to blame each other for our disappointment when our expectations weren't realized. How
Hmm.
does this resonate?
So we're blaming others when our expectations such as failure, right? Is that what I'm interpreting? Right? Like
Could read one more line from the top. Back then, I think she's talking about her husband. When Steve and I were both home, we set all kinds of wild expectations about getting stuff done. What we never did was reality check our expectations or make them explicit. We just tended to blame each other for our disappointment when our expectations weren't realized.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And now we got to talk about this.
Yeah. Oh, does this resonate with your leadership journey
Yeah,
or
I
your?
think it does. I've worked for some bosses who put some pretty unattainable goals out there and said, we're going to do this.
Mhm.
I'll never forget one year where it said every 100% is going to read at a certain reading level across the whole district. And every teacher looked at each other, myself included, like, how? Like, there are so many different struggles. So I think when, as a leader, when you're putting together your goals or um, your ideas, as Brene was saying, I think you need to be intentional about what and how you're going to get there. You know,
Mm.
you just say we're going to do this without an actionable plan, then the finger pointing and the anger really starts to get there. So I think it has to be well thought out. I think it has to be more than just a pipe dream or a big golden ticket in the sky. I think it needs to be attainable with the staff or people you have and the community you have and the resources you have. So I
Mhm.
think that's what we're talking about, but maybe not.
Mhm. Mhm. And what about the blame element here?
I think blame's so easy, right? Like, it's so easy to blame than to actually think about something, right? So criticism, anybody can do it. They can point the finger, but no one really wants to ever reflect and say, I could have done better. And or, maybe it was my fault, because when you're spreading that blame and that negativity, you're not leading. You're adding to the fire of the uh, negativity and adding to the fire that will never get done. And that mindset will grow, unfortunately. And then, the finger pointing gets worse and worse and worse, and you're starting to create a toxic work environment. That's not conductive to any kind of work.
Mhm. Mhm. And blaming can never bring any, like, self-judgment or judging others can never bring any better results than going forward and
Yeah.
finding solutions, right?